Welcome to Starcadum, where we are obsessed with Star Wars Unlimited. I'm Ryan, and I'm so glad you're here because today I want to show you the Obi-Wan Kenobi deck I recently took to my local store's weekly event. So here is the list, which as you can see is a mono blue Obi-Wan Kenobi deck, and I wanted to try a mono blue deck because I don't have a lot of experience doing monocolored decks, and Obi-Wan happens to be one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, and I thought this would be a fun place to start and try out some new ideas. Now, a lot of other channels on YouTube or podcasts or whatever, they might show you a deck and say, this is the best thing ever, you gotta play it, you'll win so many games, it has an 80% win rate. I try really hard not to do that, okay? I just make these videos to kind of document my own thought process. I mean, I have many, many years of trading card game experience, but Star Wars Unlimited itself is still pretty new, so I'm still figuring things out here. But I thought by kind of documenting and sharing my own thought process with you guys, maybe you'll learn some stuff, maybe we can make some cool discoveries together. And that's what these decks are. They're just kind of experiments each week. I try not to play like a list copied from anywhere else. And even though I'm building my own thing every time, I know it's going to still look similar to like any other mono blue Obi-Wan list because right now there's only 3 sets of cards available. So the pool isn't that deep. And so there's going to be, the same cards appearing quite a bit. But even so, it is fun to come into something and just say, hey, I want to make the best mono blue deck I can using what's in my own collection. What does that look like? And since you are curious, I'm sure, we play 3 rounds at my local game store and it's best of 1. And I ended up winning 2 out of my 3 with this deck, but technically, I didn't actually win either of those games, right? They went to time, and my opponents in both cases, thank you, Rob, thank you, Scott, both conceded because we didn't want to get like the double loss. And honestly, I think I had inevitability at that point. I just needed a few more turns to like end the game. And so that is like one flaw that this deck clearly had right from the beginning. It wasn't able to finish games in time, even though it did build up to a point where it felt like I couldn't lose. And I will admit, I chewed up a lot of the clock just thinking with this deck, which is kind of rare for me. I usually play more aggressive strategies or stuff with a more clear game plan, but this one I had to really pause and think, when do I want to use Obi-Wan's ability to heal a unit? How much damage can my opponent do on their next move? Do I need to heal my sentinel so it won't die on their next attack? Or can I wait and see if I draw it binds all things to like maximize my damage? And there were just so many like micro decisions that it just compounded into a lot of math and a lot of thinking things through. And that definitely ate up a lot of time. But that is the type of thing that I would get faster at if I played this deck more often. Okay, so with all that said, what cards did I bring into my mono blue Obi-Wan Kenobi deck, and why did I bring them? Well, we'll start with the leader, Obi-Wan, right? He's, like I said, my favorite dude, and he's got an ability that lets him exhaust to heal 1 damage from a unit. So right away, that's going to make your individual units survive a little bit longer, stay in the fight a little bit, longer, and kind of draw the game out and prolong things. When he deploys, he becomes a 4/7 himself with 6 resources to deploy him. He becomes a 4/7 with Sentinel. And when he attacks, you can heal a damage from a unit to deal a damage to another unit. So now you kind of switch from being truly defensive and healing into something a bit more aggressive, and you can start picking off opponents' units while keeping your own stuff kind of topped off on health. I thought that was kind of a neat switch up from most other decks where usually you want to deploy your leader and then protect them, often by like playing a sentinel along with it, right? One of my other favorite decks would be like play Rey and then play the Obi-Wan unit who has sentinel so your opponent can't immediately attack into Rey. But since this Obi-Wan leader is a sentinel, your opponent will always be able to attack into him no matter how many other sentinels you have because they can just pick whichever one they want. So it was very weird to have a leader who kind of has this big like target on himself already. And that definitely influenced some of my other choices for cards in the deck. So starting off, we've got R2-D2, 3 copies. I mean, this is one of the best cards in Heroic, I think. It's always useful. It works when you play it and when you attack, and being able to just constantly kind of control the top card of your deck or have some influence over it at least helps you hit your curve, helps you find your removal pieces, helps you find your late game bombs. We love R2, and we of course play R2. And I know that the graphic puts these in like weird order, but I'm just going to do units first. So I also had 1 copy of Barriss, and it feels like she should be in here, right? Because each friendly unit that has been healed this phase gets +1. And you're like, okay, cool. Obi-Wan's going to heal. She'll be around. Now I get a little buff out of it. But it's a 1/1 for 1. And like, that's just not strong enough by itself to like really do anything. And the +1 on healed stuff actually doesn't come up super often. So like, I think you're supposed to play her so that you can use like Force Throw in a blue-red deck like really early and clean up your opponent's board while stripping their hand. So I don't think she actually fits in this deck, and I was never really like satisfied with her. It was mostly just because I wanted more stuff to play on like turn 1, and I had one in my collection that I wanted to try out. But I would probably cut Barriss here in the next version of this deck. Up in space, we've got Restored Arc 170. I mean, this is just like a classic card at this point. Almost every blue heroic deck is going to run this. The Restore is nice, and you just need a decent early space option to get up there and, I don't know, fight off A-Wings or other stuff like that. And then we've got Queel. I only put 2 copies in here, but in hindsight, definitely should have gone up to 3 of this guy. I did not really appreciate how good drawing a card every attack actually can be. I mean, the only miss are the 3 copies of R2-D2 in here, right? Any other attack he makes, it's going to reveal a blue card, which will match the base, and I get to draw it. And that's really, really good. So I probably should have gone up to 3 copies of Queel and maybe cut that Barriss to make room for it. We also have 3 copies of the Padawan Starfighter, which also kind of works with Barriss, but like really you would play this as your opener and then follow it up with like Yoda on the next turn, and then you can start attacking with your 2/4 up in space, which is quite strong. And then the last 2-cost unit in here was the Royal Guard Attaché, which again feels like it was designed to work with Obi-Wan specifically, right? Because it comes in with 2 damage on it already, and then Obi-Wan can heal it, and now you've got a 2-cost 2/4 that can become a 2/5. That's a lot of health to have early on in the game, and that just kind of gives you like a good solid unit that you can keep peeling damage off with Obi-Wan whenever you need to do something. And it seems like it fits here. I mean, it doesn't really have any relevant traits. It's not a Force Jedi or anything like that. But I think this is still supposed to be in the deck, even if it's kind of vanilla and not very exciting. Once we get up to 3 resources, though, that's where the exciting stuff does start to show up. Yoda is one of my favorite cards in the whole game so far. I mean, 2/4, Restore 2, and then when defeated, you get to draw a card. So, like, your opponent has to kill him. They can't let him just keep healing you. But then if they do kill him, you get that card back, right? And getting cards or cards that replace themselves or let you draw extra cards in a card game is really, really good. That's more options in your hand. It's easier to drop resources and continue to curve out. You always want to have more cards. And so Yoda just is like a linchpin in making so many things come together for this deck. Definitely want 3 copies of Yoda. Supporting Yoda, I've got some new cards here from Twilight of the Republic. I've got the 41st Elite Corps and 3 copies of Captain Typho. I thought the captain would be pretty good here. Giving Sentinel out freely would kind of help me control combat a little bit more. But realistically, like half my deck already has Sentinel anyway. And the rest of the time, like it didn't really end up mattering. So he's mostly just like a 3-cost 2/4 that in a pinch can be like a roadblock to stop something. But ultimately, this could be almost anything else, I think. So I'm not entirely sure. And then the Elite Corps, I mean, are a 3-cost 3/3, which is not super great, but with their coordinate, they become a 3/6, which does give you a lot more breathing room to use Obi-Wan's ability or to use It Binds All Things, and you just kind of use that extra health pool to heal or, you know, throw damage at your opponent. And I guess that does actually work okay with with the captain there, because if you turn that 3/6 into a sentinel, that can slow down some of the aggressive decks out there. But those two cards, like, I wasn't in love with. Like, I love Yoda. He's great. And if I had a way to run like 3 or 4 more copies of Yoda, I would just do that. But the 3 cost slot is kind of weird. Like, I don't think there's as many good units there as there are for like your 1s and 2s, which you really want because you want to have something to do on that first turn. And then once you get up into like 4 and above, you get access to some really cool stuff. But the 3 cost spot remains like my least favorite outside of Yoda. So let me know what you think about that, because 3 cost is just kind of a weird spot for heroic decks right now, I feel. But then, like I said, up at 4, we've got Kanan, who's great. You know, every time he attacks, you got a chance to heal, and he's just got decent stats as a 4/5. And he's a Force Jedi guy, so he turns on a lot of our other event cards, which we'll talk about in a moment. I also, because I'm in double blue, I get to try out Duchess's Champion, which I was like, whatever, it's a 1/8, and maybe sometimes it's a Sentinel. No, this thing was like almost always a huge obstacle for my opponent, right? Anytime they tried to go around it, you just get a wider board. Now they have to go through it. And if they tried to like stay small and, only play 1 or 2 big units, I would just hit them with like Fell the Dragon or something. And it just became a nightmare for my opponent to deal with. So I think maybe a 3rd copy of this champion might be a good inclusion, especially if I'm planning to stay in double blue, but we'll talk more about that later. And then the last 4 drop I tried to squeeze in here was 1 copy of Daughter of Dathomir as another Force unit. Again, I was really trying to amp up my Force, numbers so that I could use all of the cool events that were payoffs for that. And she also wants to be at full health, and then she gets a Restore 2, which is comparable to Kanan, but her stats are just a little bit worse. And her ability only works when she is fully healed, so that does put pressure on like where you're spending Obi-Wan's ability or where you're using it binds all things. But I wanted at least 1 more 4 cost unit in here just to make sure I was hitting that on curve. And the daughter I could leave or I could cut. I'm not really sold either way yet. I might want to run a few more games with her just to kind of see how that goes. 5 takes us up to Obi-Wan's Aethersprite, his ship, which actually works great with him, of course, by design, right? It's named after him. It's clearly going to work well together. So this one, when played and when it attacks, you can deal a damage to itself and then throw extra damage on another space unit. So you just get to obliterate stuff. I mean, anything short of a lurking TIE Phantom, you can just eat your way right through and then use your leader to heal the ship. So you get to keep doing that. This by itself can like really be a problem for your opponent. It's also probably attacking their base for like 4 a turn, and that will add up pretty quickly, although in my case, not quick enough. But I was very happy with the 5 cost ship up there in space, and I mean, I only ran 9 ships, right? The Restored Arcs, the Padawan Starfighters, and then the Aethersprites to kind of close it out, and that worked out just fine. I also have 1 copy in my collection of Ki-Adi-Mundi, and had to fit him in here, so we're running him, and just the stats alone, a 5/7, nice beefy guy, great to heal with Obi-Wan, fine to turn into a Sentinel with the captain, if I want to go that route. And then again, if your opponent tries to like go wide or play multiple things, I guess, and you've got a board that has 2 or 3 or has 3 or more units for coordinate, I usually 2 on the ground and like 1 in space. Then they're really in a pickle because they don't want to feed you more cards, but they need to play something to kill this guy. So probably one of the better cards in the deck, and I would love to get 2 more in here to kind of maximize that. But I only had the 1, so that's what I used. And finally, our top end is 3 copies of Unit Obi-Wan because he's great, works well with all of the other Force units in the deck. I own 2 copies of Luke, so he's in here, and I was very happy to open a Luminara in my collection. So that gives me another 7 cost high-end Jedi. Like, it should just be another Luke if I had one, but I don't. But I wanted something else up in the top end to kind of close out games. And so she feels a little weird because she has grit, which means you want her to take damage, and Obi-Wan wants to be healing stuff. But whatever. Like, she just comes in, she can heal your own base for a bit, start taking some damage, start throwing damage around. Again, it just kind of is a nice top-end Force unit that still works with all of your events. So that was the game plan with the ground units and space units, right? Try to just hold the line, heal my guys, get into a shoving match, kill off the opponent's board, make it hard for them to deal damage to me because I've got sentinels, I've got healing, I've got restore, I've got a little bit of everything. And it felt very flexible. Like there was no matchup where I was like, I can't win this, I don't have the right units. But the events are really what tip the scales in my favor, I think. Mystic Reflection is in here mostly to answer lurking TIE Phantoms or any other, shielded small unit that I just didn't want to have to deal with, because I almost always have a Force unit. So this kills Village Protectors, 7th Fleet Defender, all that really annoying stuff that otherwise would take like multiple attacks to get through. This would just pluck that with ease. Also trying out 2 copies of It Binds All Things, and this was kind of weird because like Obi-Wan's already healing stuff, but Binds All Things, you want things to have like 3 damage on it so you can get maximum damage out of this. So there was kind of a weird tension there, but like this was still pretty good. Like when Duchess's Champion was up to like 6 or 7 damage, and then suddenly it plummets back down and kills somebody, you feel pretty great with that. But I think maybe 2 copies was too many. Maybe just 1 for the surprise factor would be fine. But I don't know. One thing I do know, though, is that Hello There often got stuck in my hand. It was really hard to time this one correctly because my opponent would just, either play something that was too big to kill with it, right? If it has 5 or more toughness, then like this doesn't answer something and it has to hit it the turn they play it. So what you need them to do is play something, then you play Hello There to weaken it, then you attack into it and use your own units to kill it. But there's many, many times where that just doesn't work because usually you do all of your attacks first and then you play your units. So by then I wouldn't have any attacks left to answer anything with 5 or more health. And then Hello There just wouldn't work. So this probably should be Takedown, which is much more flexible. It's a little more expensive, but it can hit stuff at any point in the game rather than the turn that they play it. So I think I might switch those. I mean, it's flavorful, it's cool, I love it, but it didn't really work for the timing of this deck. The Force is with me, also super good. Like this is one of my favorite other cards, and I say that a lot. I mean, this deck has a lot of my favorite cards in it. What a surprise. 2 experience and an attack is amazing. Almost always you're getting a shield, which means that you get to attack into something and not take any damage, which then just really frustrates your opponent because not only do they still have to chip away at your health, which you're going to be healing with Obi-Wan, they didn't even get to like hurt you when you made this huge attack. And you can use this on anything. I mean, it works great on stuff like Yoda or Queel or even R2-D2. You can throw it on a space unit. I mean, the Padawan Starfighter just becomes a tank when you use this. So I was always happy to draw one of my Forces with me's, and they are usually the card that like locked up the game, right? Like if I had Ki-Adi-Mundi out and I used the Forces with me and now he's like a 7-9 that's just slaughtering whatever they play every turn, that's where you want to be. Fell the Dragon, you need like a catch-all answer for Star Destroyers or big stuff, so 2 of these feels right. Could maybe go up to 3, but with R2, you're probably going to find 1 to have on hand to answer whatever big play your opponent tries to make. And then we've also got a single copy of Jedi Lightsaber in here. Amazingly, I only own 1 of these, but it goes on just about anybody in this deck and turns them into, a house, right? Like +3/+3 is a lot. And then when they attack, they give -2/-2 to whatever they're attacking into, so they're not even going to take a lot of damage back, and it just lets you kill a lot of things. I don't love to go overboard on upgrades because it feels really bad when you get hit with a waylay or you play this and then your opponent cunnings you or fell the dragon on somebody. So the best place to stick it is probably on Obi-Wan leader when he deploys, but in a pinch you can still throw this on Yoda or even R2 and just go to town with it. So that is the whole deck, and like I said, it played out fine. Like I did well enough in each game that I got pretty far into things, and I feel like I would have won had I just a little bit more time, or if I'd been a little quicker in my own choices about, sequencing my plays and making my attacks and everything. But overall, like, the deck still feels like it's missing that thing that really pushes it up into the next level. Going forward, I might actually switch into like a green base and add in stuff like General's Blade and maybe resupply and just try to ramp a little faster so that I can get my Ki-Adi-Mundi, my Luke Skywalker, my unit Obi-Wans, and just try to hit those big guys and then start using, forces with me and stuff like that to really crush my opponents. But I don't know. That's one direction I could take it. Could also bring in a red base, maybe even Tarkin Town, bring back in the Force Throw package, pillage, stuff like that, and turn this more into a variant of the red Ray decks that performed really well last season. Could also go yellow, right? Make this into a cunning deck. And then you get access to stuff like Plo Koon or Ezra, or start adding in Grogu to kind of tap down, and it becomes more of like a control-y. Not that this isn't a control deck already, but you know what I mean. You get to play your own waylays. You get Spark of Rebellion. Lots of good stuff in yellow that would support this game plan as well. So yeah, I'm excited to keep kind of experimenting here. I love Obi-Wan. I think this was just a great starting point for this deck, but I learned a lot. I learned that the big, expensive Jedi are certainly more fun. Like, I would rather slam Ki-Adi and Luke and Obi-Wan rather than play like this Royal Guard or, small stuff like that. So a ramp package does seem really attractive to me right now. But this was also aggressive enough with, Padawan Starfighters, and Kanan slaps pretty hard. So, like, it's a pretty decent mid-range kind of control thing. We got lots of fun events that synergize with our Jedi and Force users, and I feel like Twilight finally gave us enough units that really fill out this curve, right? Barriss maybe is keep or cut. The daughters kind of give me a backup for Kanan on turn 4. We've got some extra 7s now to go along with our Luke. So you can really build a deck that hits all of those points and always has access to forces with me, binds all things, mystic reflection. Those are all really fun to play, and they're very useful. So I'm going to keep working on this one. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know. Should I keep it mono blue? Should I look into one of the other colors and make some changes that way? What do you think? What cards do you recommend I add or cut? I want to hear about it, because we're obsessed with Star Wars Unlimited here. That's what this channel is for. And are you learning anything from these videos? Is it just me rambling for like 20 minutes? Or do you get kind of like the sense of my thought process and seeing how I structure like a curve and pick cards that synergize together? Like, is that useful? Or do you just want like gameplay videos on Karabast? I don't really know. So you got to sound off in the comments. I would love to get some feedback. So do that for me, and then make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure you like the video so that it'll go viral. It'll go huge. Trying to grow this channel into something really cool that we can all get something useful out of. So I appreciate all the support. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving this week for anyone who celebrates here in the States. I had a wonderful time with my family, so shout out to Keith and Corey. They're big supporters of my channel, and I couldn't do this without everyone who makes it all possible. So thank you very much. Have a great weekend, or time with your friends and family of your own, and I'll see you next time for more exciting adventures with Obi-Wan and whoever I bring to the party next week. We'll see ya.